So you're over in right on Times Square, right in the center of all the action.
That's right. It's an old, that Brill building, it's an old music
Is it?
building. There's Tin Pan Alley was situated there for
Oh,
a
really?
long
Yeah.
time.
It's at 49th, right?
49th, between 49th and 50th.
Right. Middle of everything, right? Welcome very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Peter Kaufman. And Peter Kaufman, I guess we're going to get the story completely straight, but he's the president and CEO, publisher of an entity based here in New York City, right in the heart of Times Square, called TV Books. And he's got a very interesting story to tell about that, and we're going to fill you in on the company. He also has an interesting life in his own right. And Peter, welcome very much to Conversations and Manhattan Network.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. And I wonder it is, we got a full 58 minutes here, so I wonder maybe if it is. I find people like that if we can. If you could fill in a little bit, we'll anchor it on your background, your own background. You're from New York originally, I understand?
Yeah, I grew up in Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
Apparently there's some sort of dying breed of us, but grew up here and went away to school for a little while and then to college upstate New York at Cornell.
Yeah. Ithaca, is that?
In Ithaca,
Yeah,
that's right.
Uh-huh.
And after that, spent a couple years at Columbia at the Harriman Institute for Advanced Study of the Soviet Union, as
Yes,
it was
indeed.
called then.
Yeah, Mr. Saunders was up there?
Yeah, Jonathan Sanders
yeah.
was there, and in fact, he just worked on one of our books.
Did he?
And it was a heady time. That was from 84 to 86, and in March of 85, Gorbachev ascended.
Yeah.
So it was a busy time for the discipline of Sovietology, which is something that I was pretty much involved with.
Well, that's very interesting. Were you able to pick up, I think I heard you say, you picked up the language pretty well and so forth?
Yeah.
Which is a big plus.
Yeah, my father's side of the family comes from this sort of town in, it's Ukraine now, but we grew up calling it Russia, called Odessa.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
Black Sea.
Black Sea,
Yeah.
So the language has always been somewhat coursing in the bloodstream, I guess.
Would that have been, I don't know, I mean, this is getting a little afield, but in Odessa, is that in Ukraine? And is there a difference between Russian and Ukrainian?
There
and
is.
Do you know them both, or can
There
they?
is.
Is it like Italian and Spanish, or?
It's something like that. There are there are a couple of different letters in the alphabet in Ukrainian. A couple of Roman letters got into the Cyrillic. Go figure. Somebody probably just made a typing error and
Right.
it stuck around.
Well, I hope it was after Gutenberg. They didn't have to do it carving with wood on, with knife. But so you'd be interested in that. It was an interesting subject. So you have been and are interested in the what was the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
forth now.
International affairs. I mean, I suppose it was. If life is short and one should spend one's time doing something interesting, I guess. And it's at the time the arms race was pretty heavy duty.
Oh man.
So we were trying to figure out, friends of mine and I, how to devote ourselves to helping slow it down.
Well, it was an interesting. You read George Kennan, and I don't know who the great Sovietologists are. Mr.
George
Cohen
Kennan is definitely the star of the whole pantheon. Stephen Cohen at Princeton.
You were interested in geopolitics then, or what was it?
In international affairs,
Yeah.
sort of international relations.
So much of the international thing had to do with the heartland and protecting that East European plain, and this idea of I don't know, it wasn't George Kennan, it was before that, but that was the basis of geostrategic thinking, I think.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy, and I remember having on a bulletin board in college something that the RAND Corporation had devised, which was a bomb damage effect calculator, sort of a slide rule, but for people involved in weapons, and that's sort of an odd thing to have, that sort of static measurement of human death.
It's an amazingly, I'm not that familiar with the full details, but what an event, what a time, what a century that we live in, and you're coming into maturity and so forth, that they've got this incredible technological destructive capability. The thermonuclear capability is really something that's been hanging over our heads like a Damoclean sword throughout a good part of this century, and it's the central question of how we can. Maybe we're getting too far afield, but are you concerned they just didn't they didn't ratify the test ban treaty and so forth? Are you concerned about that? Mr. Bradley said the other day in the debate or the thing with the statement with Mr. Gore that he thought that was the leading question that confronts us all, is to get these atomic weaponry and power under control.
Mm-hmm.
And is this something still you're interested in or concerned about?
I'm pretty deeply interested in it. One of the wonderful things about television is that
Yeah.
television really does cover international affairs. You have to look a little hard for it, but you find it on the networks, on public television in particular. You have the explanatory possibilities that television offers for all of the country to discuss things like that beat out anything else like the internet or print.
It certainly beats it out now in terms of the influence that it does have in the mass, as a mass medium. There's nothing quite to come up to you. Do you think the internet is likely to come to where it will rival the power of television? Now they're beginning to stream and so forth. And
yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's another big important technological issue.
Certainly, I mean, part of our business development is taking that potential into account.
So I know you had this interest in this geostrategic thinking and that sort of thing. It's a very responsible kind of thing to be concerned with, and then also the Soviet Union. And then now you're doing this media. It's a thing where you're concerned with the media. And maybe you could segue your life for us as you got to be interested in this media questions and the establishment of this entity, TV Books.
Well, my interest has always been to combine sort of a goal in life to think about self-improvement and improvement more broadly, and publishing, media. In graduate school at the Harriman Institute, there was a journal there called the Journal of International Affairs, and that was something I had the opportunity to work on as an editor when I was there. And even prior to that, up in Ithaca, we had newspaper opportunities, various startup newspapers in college, and two of them, which I was involved in starting up, were devoted to discussing, in large part, politics and international affairs in particular. So the combination of media and substance, I think, has always been important, and it led quite well. I suppose it was a little bit of a tortured path, but there is some natural link between TV Books and those days. After I left graduate school, I worked in the editorial department, which was basically me at the time and a Xerox machine, of a research institute in New York called the Institute for East-West Studies.
Yes,
that's a think tank, foreign policy. Used to have a lot of resident fellows coming in from Eastern Europe and gradually the former Soviet Union. This was before the Berlin Wall collapsed. So that publishing program grew from the Xerox room at that old institute on 40th and Lexington to a sort of 40-book-a-year publishing program with small monographs and books and relationships with publishers like Macmillan in the UK and St. Martin's here and university presses and Westview Press at the time too. And that was a great opportunity to basically talk about things of great substance and use publishing as a means of getting them out.
And your role, were you in an editorial position or a publishing position?
It was the director of publications, which was a highfalutin term because it wasn't exactly Bertelsmann that we were talking about.
Yeah, right.
But it was a good period to be doing that, and I left that position to start a non-profit organization to help publishers and booksellers in the former Soviet Union and Eastern and Central Europe. That was an organization called Pub Watch, which had unfortunate connotations in the United Kingdom, but it was a non-profit designed to really help the book industries in those parts of the world after the collapse of communism, legally at any rate. A lot of the American activity devoted to supporting independent thought in that part of the world was activity that centered on the laws of censorship. And once those were abandoned, it was assumed that those countries would be free to mature. And in fact, the structure of free thought in all of those countries, what Karl Popper and George Soros and some other people who talk about these matters more regularly than I ever did, referred to as civil society. And civil society I think cannot be built without a vigorous media industry that's independent.
Yeah, independent. Yeah, and that there are institutional frameworks for these countries that, and some people say that some of these are lacking. It makes it difficult. We have all these institutional cartilage or something that holds our society together that they don't. And it was one of the things, whether it's perestroika, there was glasnost, there was an openness kind of thing, which was part of what Mr. Gorbachev was trying to do. Were you, maybe I could just go afield again, were you surprised, having been aware of it and in a position of being young and aware of what's going on, were you surprised at the implosion of the Soviet Union and the, or did you see it coming from ahead? And did the people who were expert, as it were, in terms of Soviet Union, did they see that coming, or did our intelligence agencies see that coming, or did it come just as a sort of surprise, or do you have any inside
it's
information
one of the great,
on
it's
that?
one of the great tough questions. I'm now a senior fellow at the World Policy Institute at the New School for Social Research, and one of my colleagues there, there was a big celebration of the New York Times a few years back, and he was invited to contribute an op-ed to the 100 greatest op-eds of the New York Times. And he wrote his op-ed about the fact that all of these great political pundits, no one really foresaw the collapse of the Berlin Wall. It does make you think about you know, the innate level of human intelligence. If you are sort of dependent on leaders who were unable to see the I suppose the weak substructure of all of these political regimes, despite the fact that they were being fed the most advanced intelligence available to date.
Yeah, it might make one wonder about the quality or the efficacy or the how do we view our intelligence gathering capability in general.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is the thing.
Yeah.
But one of the things that helped hasten, I think, the collapse and the, I guess, the consolidation of that disintegration of totalitarian rule there was media. And when you have CNN and other media, radio, television, being able to be received by ordinary people, I can tell you, I think we were wrong about a lot of things, but Radio Free Europe, in its own way, was a great contributing factor. So it's odd to think of thanking both Langley and Ted Turner at the same breath for what they've done.
Right, I see. Yeah, well, yeah, but it is that, and then there's a question of now that model begins to be, or some people begin to see that on the world scale, because we have this Western, well, in general, since the last 500 years or so, tended to be a European hegemony, if that's correct. It's nearly so now in terms of the not only the political and economic, but also the cultural and the media outreach is from the developed or Western world. And some people in, you know, I wondered, I don't know if you don't want to comment on that, but is there an imbalance? Is there an imbalance that you can see between the, let's say, us being the United States, particularly in the Western world, and the rest of the world? And is it a problem, or is that part of a problem of a difference between the information haves and have-nots? Or well, it's another big question that we look ahead. But you're young and you can begin to start looking at these questions.
I think that the United Nations has tried to address some of these things in the various ways that the United Nations can, with sort of those, it was a big deal with new information order, who had access to information and the technology that brought it. It's a big deal. You look at the Internet. The Internet's pretty much English dominated. But I think that there's a great leveling taking place all over the world, in the sense that you can communicate around the world instantly.
It's a miracle.
Now. It is
a miracle. It's like DNA going through an organism or something.
That's right.
It's got a great promise, doesn't it, for democratization in the best sense of that word.
I think it does. I think when it becomes a two-way medium, that is to say, when you can somehow communicate back with your television, it'll have an impact on politics that'll be peculiar.
Yeah, it will. I think some people are beginning to feel that in the form. People who are well-ensconced and established institutions have a sort of sense of angst they wake up with in the morning. There's something going on. Bobby
That's
Dylan,
right.
you say there's something going on here and you don't know what it is. There's
Yeah.
something going on, and there's that sort of afloat. Now, what about this? When did you get the idea of the, because we want to particularly focus on the TV books and this publishing entity that you're heading up, and maybe you could share a little of the philosophy of it and so forth.
When I was doing work with this not-for-profit organization in Europe, it became clear that in both Western Europe and Eastern Europe, publishers had relationships with television companies that weren't being thought of here as natural. In this country, pretty much until about 95, 96, I'd say, television and publishing were viewed largely as opposing forces.
Mm-hmm.
Television as something that was lowbrow, publishing as something that was devoted to really a more intellectual pursuit. In Western Europe, television began as a state-controlled enterprise.
That's right, yeah.
So you have the BBC,
Right.
for example, or ZDF in Germany, and TF1 in France, and those were broadcasters that had just extraordinary content to deliver.
Still do.
Still
BBC World Series is still a good thing to tune into, yes.
It sure is.
Yes.
I mean, and that it was evident that publishing in those countries, in Great Britain and in Germany and France, publishers were working with television and believing that television was something other than Baywatch,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
Mm-hmm.
In Eastern Europe, where I was doing a lot of work, the publishing leaders who arose from, in some cases in Poland and the Czech Republic, underground, to become elected to run in free elections, these huge publishing colossi, these formerly state-owned institutions, they were young, and they had friends who had been through various anti-totalitarian resistance movements and during the Cold War, and who ascended to the tops of the television networks.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked to one another. And I remember one conversation in the Czech Republic where a Czech publishing friend of mine learned that the television station, the main one in that country, which was then Czechoslovakia, was going to air The Thornbirds. And it occurred to him, well, maybe we should publish Czech translation of this book at the same time that the television show is aired.
It is a natural?
It's a natural. It was a natural thought to him. And watching that and knowing back at home the proliferation at that time, again, 94, 95, the proliferation of television stations devoted to nonfiction entertainment, sort of the History Channel,
Right.
the Discovery Channel, all of
Right.
that was just really getting underway in a significant fashion. It became clear that there might be an opportunity to work with television in systematic ways, to develop the content in television into print.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that is something that is really needed. That division, I mean, it's also. I used to go and study at the feet of, in a certain annual kind of way, with Marshall McLuhan up in Toronto, and he had written this absolutely. I thought it was an absolutely, the Gutenberg Galaxy was an incredible, magnus opus about the influence of the Gutenberg revolution. Time magazine just had a thing where they issued the 100 most influential people of the last 1,000 years, and they put Mr. Gutenberg #1 among all the people, the 100 people, and it was literacy. Mr. McLuhan used to argue that literacy and the phonetic alphabet particularly created linear thinking, and that the Western establishment and the way in which we see things is very predicated to an idea even of what rationality is, and so forth, and that we have a commitment to the linear perceptions that print particularly gives us, but we're coming into an electronic, multimedia, parallel processing kind of world, and the body perceives things all at once, and that we're coming into a world that the technological extensions of our consciousness is creating something different. So
It's interesting.
this difference between literature, there's tremendous commitment on the part of the establishment
Yeah.
to the idea of literacy and the idea of stringing thoughts out into a long linear pattern that you begin to get even a sense of rationality from. But we're coming into an electronic age, and these two things are beginning to merge and melt, and they ought to.
Right.
And you're sort of beginning to put the horse out in front of the cart in a certain sense in terms of your concept that it doesn't have to all flow from a book going to television, but I saw one of your pieces, some of the best writing is for television and the multimedia.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can tell you that from where I sit, I see both the horse and the cart, and sometimes different parts of the horse. It's been a rocky road.
Yes.
The basic precept of the publishing house is that some of the finest intellectual property in the world is developed for television.
Right.
And that's a concept that doesn't necessarily sit well with librarians,
Right.
but it certainly sits well with producers of television because they know that they're devoting millions of dollars, thousands of man-hours into the research and writing behind all of these quality television programs that you see. And I mean to say quality television programs, not just nonfiction, not just documentaries that you find on public television, for example, but also there's extraordinary comedy on
We brought in. Well, we might just say you've taken some of the things, if I may, that have been sort of television landmarks and that sort of thing, and then brought us print-oriented additions to that. And one of them in the thing here, I asked you to bring it, but here it is. Maybe we can show some of these. Let's show some of the things that are coming out. Here's one with the Monty Python, the crew out of England that are so funny. And they put these things together for television, and then you bring it, in addition to that, people who are fans of that can get additional information about what went into how they put it together and that sort of thing. And this is one of the books, and there are many others that you've done. But maybe you want to talk to this, or to the implication of coming from what was written for or put together for television, and then it coming out into a literary form.
One of the books I didn't bring today that we've had the opportunity to publish is the complete collected works of Rod Serling, his short stories behind the Twilight Zone. And he was a great writer, and he wrote for television.
That's
what
right.
I mean, sort of science fiction writer.
He's also a real good presenter, as they say in Britain.
Yes,
he had a
he
great
was great
presence.
on camera.
Yeah.
The whole sort of vision of the company is that in the same way that you turn a remote as you sit and watch television and you see, for example, a history of war on one channel and then Monty Python on another and the Twilight Zone on another, so it is flipping through our catalog.
Yes, that's right.
That you've sort of come across those different books, and that our publishing house sort of reflects the full wealth of television in its publishing program.
Very interesting. Marshall McLuhan used to say we don't read the front page of the newspaper. We get into it like we do a warm bath. A little bit here, a little bit there. It was a kind of a nice metaphor. But they had. But you have this thing. Now, one thing I'd ask you. You say TV writing. Do you include within that, because we've got literature and then we have a multimedia world that's coming, and that includes film, cinema. Do you include in that the writing for screenplays, stage plays, or other things, or is that into the realm of literature, or is it just strictly television? Television writing that you're talking about. And one last thing, does it include the writing and the creativity that goes into the advertising industry, where so much of the creative effort has been put, particularly on the graphic side and so forth?
We began with a more circumscribed vision of the publishing company in order to really imbue it with some sort of potential for a comparative advantage vis-a-vis these other giant publishing companies that have much
because
more
you're just
resources.
getting started. What year?
It was in October of '94 that we incorporated. In '95 we began to publish.
Okay, congratulations. You're just getting together on this adventure, this new path. Yeah, okay.
Just about.
Yeah.
And that first year we published 3 books, and now we publish, this year we'll publish 49 books in this calendar year, and next year I believe we'll publish 65.
Wow, that's a big effort. Yeah.
It is big. We're a relatively small enterprise.
Right.
But yeah, the company began just focusing on television, and now we're expanding our remit to include books by folks who write for television, books by people who write about television. And television is many things now. Television is the internet. There's no question about that in our minds, and television is also film. So books that are developed from film and the books that are connected to the internet are certainly books that can fit into our publishing program.
Yeah, well then that includes a considerable more than just television. That's multimedia. Now they've got this G4 that's coming, the Apple people, and multimedia is going to become an important part of communication other than just the keyboarding, you know, that has been characteristic of the internet up until now.
Yeah, to me, the interesting opportunity with the internet is we define ourselves as a publishing company. So we will, for example, there's a wonderful book that
I can hold it up and then maybe we can take another look. What is this one? This one's called?
That's a book called Riding the Rails, Teenagers on the Move During the Great Depression. And that's a book developed from a television documentary that won, for example, the Great Peabody Award for Best Television Program of the Year. And that's about a chapter in American history that few people really know about, even though it involved hundreds of thousands of kids who traveled the country on boxcars.
What year are you looking? Oh, during the Great Depression.
Exactly. During
Woody Guthrie and so on.
Yeah, it's that tradition right there. It's a book that is selling very, very well for us, and it's a book that is developed from the interviews that were conducted for the television documentary.
Right, that's wonderful.
Likewise,
they were things that weren't able to be included.
Exactly.
Wonderful. You got another one here we can show?
Likewise, this book, which is publishing next month, is a history of country music.
This is coming out in December of November of '99. Okay.
That's right.
And this is a history of
country music
by
Robert Orman, who's the editor of Country Music Magazine in Nashville. Wonderful, distinguished country music journalist, who was an advisor to the 13-hour documentary that appeared on the Nashville network, TNN.
Yeah. That's another one of those cable networks that's bringing a variety of things to us.
Exactly, including the wonderful nonfiction television.
Right. And that's a handsome cover, too.
Thank you.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That, just to say that book is based largely on interviews that were conducted for the documentary. So all of this wealth of intellectual property is being created for television, whether it's by CBS News Productions, which created this for the Nashville Network, or independent producers for public television, or many of the other sources that we have. And only part of it manages to find its way on the television screen.
They used to say in the movie industry, it's lost on the cutting room floor.
That's precisely the
concept. Yeah, right. Well, that's really good that you're. It's got a tremendous archival kind of thing, and it's appropriate too, where we don't have to lose things like that so much as we did, because we're having systems for, I don't know if it's a information safety net that's able to gather these things up and present it. And what an interesting concept to do. You set up, you're a publishing house, and then you have these producers of television and writers. You must establish a contractual relationship with them. How does that work? Or is there, from the audience's perspective, there seems to be a tie-in between television and then the book and that sort of thing. How does that work out? Do you approach them? Do they approach you? Or how does it work? I don't want you to go into any secrets or anything.
It began with us approaching them, and now it's pretty much 50-50.
Okay,
so television producers know about our company's existence, and they know that we can publish wonderful illustrated books or nonfiction books that are unillustrated, or sometimes books that have a few illustrations depending on the project, and really do it very quickly and effectively market it and sell it. Contractually, it works like this. If you're making a documentary, for example, we'll have a publishing contract with you, and we will license the rights for publishing, and in some cases other media, to for a period of years, a term of copyright, for example. And then together we'll work on selecting a writer to develop the book out of all of the material that you've assembled for the program.
So you license from the producer the material that goes into the project, including the material that's on air, or is it things that they don't use? How does that work?
Usually it's everything that's developed for the television.
Yeah, because it's a natural for them, because it gives, in a certain sense, greater awareness to the program itself, and then the program gives awareness to the book, so it's a natural kind of synergy, I guess is the term.
We were talking to one of our authors and a wonderful producer this week about a project that he's doing on the Gulf War.
Okay.
And it's a 2-hour documentary for a cable station. And that documentary is, I guess, he's going to have developed 70 hours of interviews for that program.
Right.
Now imagine the potential.
Absolutely.
There. All of that, all of the notes and research and photographs that are assembled for that. I mean...
Okay, I wonder if I could, it's at 94, it's not very long ago. Television's been in business a long time. We've had things like Burrell's and people where they get transcripts from programs, and they are transcribing companies where they just give a transcript, and that business, as it were, has been there for some time. Is that a competitor, or do you fit into that? Are you part of that? Are you bringing some value added that they have not? Is it a new venue that you represent as compared to the traditional transcribers of things that were, you know, say particularly interviews, Bill Moyer's stuff and that kind of thing? You know, maybe you could, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I had to think about that when the company first got underway.
I would have thought,
precisely. Yeah. The companies that furnish transcripts to you basically add no value to
Cover.
Exactly, to the sort of it is from show minute 1 to show minute 59, and that's it. But what we do is we take the full collection of intellectual property developed for the programs and create something that endures.
Yeah, but look at the handsomeness of these books. These are coffee table books. I mean, like
Some
art.
are,
It used to be for art books, right?
That's right. But the bulk of our publishing program really has a look like this to it. Where
show
the
them
books
again.
are
This again. Yeah, it's
books.
No,
you know,
it feels like a real.
Yeah,
I
it feels like a
understand, and
book,
you got
walks like-
illustrations in some of the. Yeah, you got illustrations and everything. So this is a real publishing effort and so forth. Publishing, St. Martin's just had trouble with that biography of Mr. Bush and other things. Publishing is, as we come into this thing with the internet and the publishing of books, the problem of remainders, or is it the possibility of having, I begin to see where they're going to have publishing on demand sort of thing and so forth.
Right.
You take account of these kind of things, and do you have many remainders, or do they do well, or how do you juggle that? I guess it's any publisher has that problem, but I don't know, maybe if you have some insight to that myself and the audience would be just sort of curious how publishing is doing as an industry in terms of meeting demand without having a great deal of remainders.
It's a difficult challenge to manage your print runs.
Yes,
to make sure that you don't overprint, because you see a lot of books coming back as returns.
They end up at the basement of Strand.
My first job was at the Strand
Was it
bookstore,
really?
and I thought it was a great privilege to have your books sold at the Strand, and now I know that it's not.
Yes, right.
The opportunities that the internet provides, and in fact new media as a whole, for our publishing program are enormous. Because if you imagine us to be publishers, and you define the term publishing as broadly as possible, it means that you publish across a variety of platforms. Ink on paper being one of them. Audio tape might be another. And through digital media, yet again another. What does that effectively mean if we have intellectual property that includes writing, video, audio, photographs, artwork, document facsimiles? We have been packaging a lot of that in book format. And now there's an opportunity to deliver that precisely over the web to people who are not interested in downloading it, and then over the internet using books on demand technology to people who are.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
Just to say, there's some good opportunities there.
I should think so. I was just wondering from the standpoint of somebody who's a producer. Let's just say the Python guys, okay, and they're doing it. So they do it for BBC or wherever they do it. Then they license You have these things, as we said, that would have ended in the cutting room floor. That's part of it. But they have a body of work that, or the honeymooners. They got certain things on the air. Then there's some things remaining around it. Do you, the people who are responsible for the original production have the rights. They have the rights to that. Then do you have the rights to that core material that was actually broadcast, or do you have the rights to the subsidiary things that are around it? And what is the licensing arrangement between you and the producers and the owners of the original property of the things that were the core value writing and production and distribution that is a television series, let's say?
TV Books is a wonderful distribution relationship in this country and in Canada with HarperCollins.
Okay.
So HarperCollins' sales force sells, and HarperCollins' warehouse and back offices distribute every book that we release.
That's huge.
It's
that's a huge advantage.
Connection.
Sure.
That allows us to have a terrific and assured platform for distribution as print-on-paper books in this country. What we're building now is a platform to ensure distribution in other media as well, including and featuring, I suppose, the internet.
No, but does what you have the right to distribute on these other media include the core product that was the, let's say, the Jackie Gleason series or the My Python series, or do you license the rights to the subsidiary material around it?
What we've been doing to date,
I mean, you know what I mean? The ancillary. That's exactly it. Yeah, right. Yeah.
What we've been doing to date is licensing only the material that we have an opportunity to develop and deliver.
Okay.
And that is material that we've been able to develop and deliver in book format. Now, with the internet, there's an opportunity to create a distribution platform that can feature content beyond the ancillary print materials, actually reaching into the core of the television production.
And it's like the word I think that come off the tongue these days in these internet age and everything is there's value added, and that you could have an individual relationship to whoever has the rights to whatever intellectual property exists, and you could work that out in any kind of a dimension that you and whoever the people are could agree upon.
Well, that's what keeps us up and busy.
All right, good. I wonder, were you this was your idea, you were the founder of it. Were you associated with HarperCollins from the beginning, or did you get started on your own out of it, and then they were interested in what you were? Could you just share that? Because HarperCollins is a huge entity,
Huge entity. Sometimes too huge an entity. But the idea was, as an independent publishing company, we began and sought distributors from the start. And at the time, the chairman of Penguin foresaw, I think, the opportunities involved in our company and took us on as a distribution client before we had published one book. And
I'm sorry, who was that?
That's the chairman of Penguin.
Penguin, okay.
Penguin.
Right.
We had a distribution relationship with Penguin for a number of years, and we had the opportunity then to move toward HarperCollins, which has this connection with Fox and News Corp, Mr. Murdoch.
Yeah.
The sales force there is a marvelous sales force with a real media savvy.
Right. So that's been in the last couple of years, then?
That's right. That's
been
2 years now.
That brought a new kind of synergy to the whole thing?
Well, we have two relationships at the company that really allowed us to take advantage of most of the opportunities that we see. Not all of them by any means, but most of them. One is this relationship with HarperCollins, which is a fantastic distribution arrangement.
Absolutely.
And the other is a relationship that we have with the majority investor partner in the business, which is Broadway Video. And
that's Lorne Michaels.
That's right. That's Lorne Michaels' film and
great.
Television and post-production and internet and college television network.
And intellectual property extraordinaire of this 20th century.
Well,
crazy. Saturday Night Live has just been a fantastic venue.
It's unbelievable. I mean, if you watch the 25th anniversary show that took place just a few weeks ago, it is, I mean, it's defined our age.
New York City, and Lorne Michaels is an institution in himself, and God bless him, Edie Bascom and all those people that work with him, But okay, you said one. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything like that, but you said sometimes too big, the HarperCollins. Are you like a smaller venture, and this is a great big ocean liner, and you have to make accommodation? Or maybe I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to address that question of, because it's also a larger question in the society, because they're saying these media mergers and the giants are setting up a certain pattern, and I just wonder maybe you want to address it in terms of your own experience.
I would say that our strength as a publishing house is our ability to be nimble and acquire rights and
like an
turn
entrepreneurial
around
thing.
exactly and turn around a product very quickly, and that resonates in the television world.
Yeah.
All we do, whatever it is, the 10 hours a day or 12 or 15 hours a day that all of us are in the office, we
a mere 15-hour day.
We tend to focus exclusively on how to edit television work for print, how to market it, how to sell it, how to manufacture it, and that's what we do. We sort of think about that all the time. We're a company now of 9 people. That's not a gigantic enterprise. HarperCollins is an enormous enterprise. Thousands worldwide. Both our strength and our weakness, I think, is the size of the company, in the sense that we're very ambitious and we try and do things. There's a huge amount of opportunity. There's an extraordinary explosion of television in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. And the Internet's coming right on the trail.
Exactly.
They're going to be streaming within this time we're talking, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're doing right now, a lot of the meetings I had today are dealing with those very issues of streaming technology.
I wonder if you are familiar possibly with the concept of Bucky Fuller, God bless him. Grand Old Comprehensive is used to have a concept of the trim tab. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I don't know that.
Any of the trim tab society, and you take a great ocean liner. Ocean liners going through the ocean. It's very hard to move them. And they have a rudder in the back. And when they get a thing going to move the rudder, there's a little thing on the back of the rudder that is called a trim tab. And that trim tab starts moving this way. It's small, and it starts moving this way. And then it slowly moves the rudder. It's what moves the direction of the ship ultimately, but it moves it a little bit, and then that gets the rudder going, and then that moves the... You may be like a trim tab in the publishing industry. I don't know. It's just... But so there's that... I guess that's probably a problem always with a entrepreneurial, fast-moving kind of, in a speedboat kind of capability to see things, and you want to be able to take advantage of those. And it's to their advantage that you can take advantage of those, no?
That's right. Yeah. And it's been... the relationship is delightful from my perspective. I know that... there are consequences for us to be so ambitious. I mean, we try and publish now. We're publishing virtually a book a week, and staff our size. That's pretty tough. And to take advantage of the new media opportunities, as I keep on, so we're discussing them, really requires, I think, an added dimension of
I should think, maybe we could pursue that ambition, what your ambition is. Do you have a 5-year plan, Mr.?
In fact...
and that sort of thing, and maybe how big is your ambition, how large is the universe, but what is it do you see? Maybe you want to share with us what some of your projected business possibilities or idealistic projections are? And
I do know that, it's only appropriate that if we began speaking at this hour about Sovietology, that we plunge into the 5-year plan. There is it's virtually impossible in today's media environment to come up with a plan that can envision all the things that would take place 5 years from now.
Synergy is the behavior systems unpredicted by the sum of its parts. There's something more resonatingly more than the sum of it all that sometimes gives surprises.
It's completely
good
surprising.
And bad.
5 years ago, one could not have explicitly predicted, the explosion of the internet.
Absolutely. That's another thing. Like they tried to date it 20 years ago, 1970, that magic year, 1970. But anyway,
we did a marvelous book called Nerds: A Brief History of the Internet, tied to a PBS series, and that book, which is sold very well too, is an account of the internet, and indicating that it's been around over 30 years.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 1970.
Exactly.
They sort of date it to the first message out at Caltech or something, or how they date what had happened. But it's amazing what's going on. Just and it's exponentially increasing. I mean, the thing is. So do you want to attach your star to the comet of all the technology? Well, I don't know. Where do you see yourself going? I mean, it would seem in my way, as I think about it here, where you positioned yourself and the way you see things, that the opportunities are almost limitless as we come into this information environment.
Well,
from what you could be seeing yourself being involved with.
There are two areas I think that we focus on. The first is content. I don't believe that we'll be in a position to publish the work of Ken Burns ever, you know, the legendary filmmaker from baseball, the Civil War, a number of projects. His brother Rick has a documentary on now about
Civil War, particularly.
New York. That was an extraordinary...
Yeah, it was in a moment in PBS. It saved their bacon.
It was.
In a large sense, yeah.
And not a bad moment for Random House either,
All
with
right.
600,000 copies of that book out.
Right.
But I do believe if we can't publish the next work of Ken Burns, we can find the next Ken Burns,
yes.
and the next Ken Burns after that.
Uh-huh.
So that is one area where we have to continue to focus our efforts, which is keeping an ear close to the ground about what is being made for television. And the other area is to determine what are the most appropriate delivery platforms for our program. Ink on paper will never go away. I hope that when the next Millennium edition comes out of Time magazine, Gutenberg will still be #1.
Okay.
But there is a unquestionable opportunity to develop what we do in other media, and with the links that we have with television, to become that facilitating agent would be, I think, one place where we'd like to look to grow.
Do you see yourself, you're a publisher now, you think of yourself as a publisher, do you see yourself becoming a production company of multimedia original material, or is that too big a stretch, or do you want to become, do you understand?
Sure
there's
do.
going to be new property created for, there'll be property for very long that's going to be created, and the market will be the internet. And that's going to be coming,
That's
and
right.
can you see yourself being involved in that? Or
Well,
is that...
I can't tell you. We get independent producers in and out of our office all the time.
Suppose, yeah.
And lately, the key buzzword is everyone comes in, sits down, and says, we're a content company. It's hilarious.
Is that
It's
it?
no longer television companies. Everybody's a content company,
Okay.
taking into account the new media.
Yeah.
I learned some lesson, which didn't really make sense to me when I first heard it, but now it's pretty reasonable. And that's that a lot of these railroad companies went out of business when they considered themselves, at the time the highways were being built, as being railroad companies. But those that survived and made a transition,
Transportation company.
exactly,
Yeah.
thought of themselves as transportation
Right.
businesses. So I think it's important that we don't view ourselves sort of exclusively as a book company. We should certainly view ourselves exclusively as a publishing company. And if we're a publishing company, what is publishing? If we define publishing as broadly as possible, that includes a variety of media. And so we have opportunities, I think, to deliver the content that we develop across the board, ink on paper and on the web.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe you could share, because I'm not in publishing and so forth, the publisher. We just had this flap, if that's the right term, over the book that said Mr. Bush had been arrested for cocaine use in '72 and sort of thing. And then it was pulled by St. Martin's. It was kind of embarrassing. He's gone to Talk magazine now, the
Yes, that's
editor. But I mean, the thing is, the relationship of a publisher, we have authors traditionally, and then the publisher, is that, I'm just not familiar. Is there a relationship between the author or the creator of an intellectual property or something like that they go to the attic and write that and then take it to the publisher, or does the publisher say, writer A, can you develop this theme, because we see that that's going to be something that's going to have a market and this sort of thing? And is it back and forth, or is it changing in terms of the relationship between the creator of the intellectual property and the supposed distributor or publisher of it?
Yeah.
Maybe you can set me straight on those relationships between them, or are they blending?
I think, you know, to the extent that writing is an art.
Yes, indeed. You need a property.
That's right. You have artists. You have people who are inspired with something deep within them. And so they have something they need to say. And those people will always be knocking on the doors of whether it's a publishing company or a studio or whatever else there might be 5 years from now or in the next millennium.
Will the publishers ever be knocking on their doors?
Yes, I think publishers do knock on
Doors of real talent.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially as we become television, is very clear about who its market is, in the sense that you will find out to the T from a network that on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, this percentage of people watching are 18 to 49. This percentage of people watching are men. This percentage of people watching are men with 3 cars and 2 wives, and
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, in the advertising industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
it's market-driven.
It's market-driven.
Yeah.
Publishing has never been like that. Publishing has never had a fundamentally clear sense of who its readers are. You don't have things that tell you, this is my demographic.
Unless it's Mr. Potter.
Right,
or
well,
Mr. Clancy,
well, you have,
a few.
even there, you don't have a. Bookstores have never had what the music industry is developing now, sound scan technology, which is tell you how many units are moving out of the stores each day. That's developing now.
Yes.
And as you are able to track who your end user is, you're certainly more able to take a step back and say, all right, given that these people are demanding X, let's go commission X for them. And I think there's going to be an increasing effort on, precisely that.
Yeah. Do you think we're on the verge of a, let's just put it this, I don't know, because like I mentioned before, this multimedia thing emerging is the Apple is, and there'll be all kinds of clones and whatnot following upon the fact that you will have in the home multimedia nonlinear editing capability, so we could have perhaps a budding generation of Fellinis or something where they're going to be able to do it. Do you think as the technology becomes available that makes these things accessible to, let's just say, nearly everybody in their home, that we will get a flowering, a renaissance of talent that have been going unnoticed? And do you think that it's likely to do that, or do you think we're likely to get just a lot of noise that isn't, and that I used to have a friend of mine who was a teacher of jewelry making, was an artist, and I used to argue with him every year. I'd say, here comes a new class, and he would say, well, Kurt, his name was Kurt Matzdorf, he was a teacher, and I'd say, well, Kurt, how many of the entering class into the art facility do you think have it this year? And he said, 4.5%. And I said, Kurt, this year, maybe it's 7. But he used to say there's only just a few that had it. That question of creativity. But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
What is your thought?
I think it would be reasonable to think that both things will go on. That there'll be a tremendous amount of noise, and that what publishers traditionally refer to as the slush pile, which are sort of unsolicited manuscripts, will come in through the internet, on video, on whatever media are available. 1 or 2 will be thrown over the transom. That's right. Exactly. I mean, that's. I think that pile will grow, and we'll have to just become more able to sift through it. Yeah, it's going to be a problem in general. How we're going to what do they call it? Spam, or they call it just all the. We're going to need some sort of a way of recognizing patterns. Yeah. We're going to have to recognize patterns. If I may, there's a term in information technology, or technology, information overload within a system permits pattern recognition. So we might be able to recognize patterns in terms of a wider comprehensive understanding of the total information, like information overload within the system permits pattern recognition of that system within a broader system. So we might get more comprehensive overview, sort of like DNA of the organism has all cells in communication. We might be able to get some patterns that are relative to the human condition, perhaps, and maybe it'll go over into our political and intellectual leadership capability to see things in a comprehensive way. That might be the promise of the age, do you think? The promise and the challenge. I think in the same way that we were talking at the beginning about, in some places television and books are viewed as sort of not at all complementary media. The fact of the matter is, nowadays, our days, or at any rate my day, I imagine the days of many of the people who will be watching this program, are consumed with, you have email, you have faxes, you have a post office mail, you have a FedEx that arrives, you have telephone calls, you have on one line, you have a cell phone call on another line. You have to manage all of this incoming information. And sort it out, and get patterns to count. Exactly. And I think that you know, the higher the level is, you know, if you're an executive in a media company, you have to, the challenge is to manage that, to understand it, and to create something out of it that you can send back out through those same media. That's tough.
Well, it's not only the media company, it's the challenge of leadership, I think. I mean, and our intellectual leadership too, and it tends to be moving, it seems to me, because all of these systems, you know, they're complicated, and all of these systems are in that. But what it does, the promise is that we're going to be able to see things less specialized, perhaps. We were talking about the failure of our intelligence agencies. Perhaps they didn't have a wide enough perspective. Philosophy was lacking, perhaps, or a large content understanding, so that we might be able to get leadership that begins to understand things from a comprehensive position, so that we don't have surprises like the fall down of the Soviet Union that come unawares to us, and that we can see things in a... It's the challenge of leadership in the broadest sense of the meaning of whatever leadership is, perhaps filling some notion of what human purpose is, which is to recognize patterns in the a priori mysterious design of the evolution of universal consciousness. And if we could get that, maybe that's the promise of the time in which we find ourselves.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's... yeah, the media and information industries, the consolidation in all of those industries is, you know, can suggest that some of the things that people are reacting to, a lot of the different things that people see are coming from the same corporate source.
Right,
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And as Mr. McLuhan used to say, the medium is the message, but the message and the medium are coming together in a kind of blending. Mr. D. Hock has a new book out, The Chaotic Age. Is an interesting term, a combination of chaos and order. You know, they have to blend these two. He established the Visa Corporation. You know. But anyway, it's one thing's for sure. The old Chinese saying is that save us from living in interesting times. I'm afraid we failed on that front, because these are the most interesting times imaginable. To be alive, participant, and conscious. I feel, I suppose you do too. It must be an interesting position, or a sense that you have as you look out and view the broader world as it develops around you, and you take part in it.
It's exciting.
It sure is. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in for this program,
Good
and remind you it's been your pleasure to have the Perceptions in of Peter Kaufman, and he's the founder, is that fair to say,
That is,
and the president and the publisher of this entity here in New York City. We'll give you his web address at the end. You can pick up on it. It's called TV Books. Very exciting position that they've carved out for themselves in this information environment. And once again, Peter, thank you for coming in, and I wish you all the very best in this information environment that you and your colleagues are having such an important hand in helping to build.
Well, thank you very much. I learned a great deal just sitting here with you, and I hope that we can have some other conversations on camera.
Why not? Okay, we could do that. Okay, it's your pleasure to have had the Perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week on Conversations. That's it for now. Again, your pleasure, Peter Kaufman, and the entity is TV Books, stationed right here in New York City, right in Times Square, as a matter of fact, in the heart of it all. And we're happy to be able to present that. We'll invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week. That's it for now. One more time, Peter, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Until next time. So we got that in. What is this? This is
well, that's just a documentary to which we're publishing a companion book next month also.
Oh, good. Okay.
Growing up as sort of young girls' experiences in America.
Yeah. Well, I hope maybe we could be in touch with one another.
Well, I'd be delighted if you can ever get a chance
together. I've got a great dog I could introduce you to.
A dog?
Yeah, oh, it's great. Jack, the best dog in the world, I think, you know. But
how old is the dog?
He's getting older now. He's about 10 years old, a Jack Russell. But he's wonderful. But maybe we get together and have a cup of coffee.
That'd be great. If you can.
I'm just down the street on 36th Street and 7th. So
come visit our offices. If
I
you
should
care
like
to.
that. Maybe we could try and arrange
That'd be great.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a great idea that you have, and I wish you all the best with it.
Well, thanks very much.
Didn't get a chance to talk that much about Mr. Michaels. Is he involved in an ongoing way, or?
He's involved.